Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Super Cheese video, and I wanted to give you some Evoker preservation gameplay, a little bit of my first impressions as I've been doodling around on the spec, trying to give you an idea of kind of expectations for the specialization, potential insight on its performance, like where is it going to be powerful, where is it going to be well suited, and such. At the moment, I'm trying to get a dungeon queue to pop, so I'm going to be trying to play this in real time. If we can't, we're just going to be covering the abilities here on the players that are currently outside. This is a healer that has a lot of mechanics from other classes. So one of the main goals of the preservation evoker is to use reversion, which you can think of as a rejuvenation from a resto druid. You want to be using this on as many targets as possible, as when it critically heals, it extends its duration. So you're aiming to try and get as many reversions out as possible. Just think of that as your hot maintenance. Outside of that, your next major ability is called Echo, and you can think of this as a casted beacon of light from a holy paladin. So if you cast Echo on an ally, what it means is all non-Echo related healing is now going to heal that ally as well. So I can Dragon's Breath these two players and have my Echo also heal the players that I had previously echoed. So this is going to be very powerful for kind of Mythic Plus group recovery, multi-target heal. You have an ability called Emerald Blossom, which is also going to couple nicely with this, that you can just plop on the ground for a big instant AoE heal. Now, one of your biggest kind of AoE heal recoveries is the Spirit Bloom. So as we are maintaining our reversions, getting our echoes out, of course we can couple this with hover and get even more echoes on the move, because of course we're going to have a 25-yard range. It's very limited, and once we're in a good position, we can go for our Spirit Bloom, which is a fully charged, massive bouncing AoE heal, which can provide a lot of good recovery. Now, your major tank mechanic that's going to help your tank survive, or in PvP to kind of help you survive through burst damage, is called Time Dilation down here, which is a 1-minute cooldown. It's going to stretch time around your ally for the next 8 seconds, causing 70% of the damage that they would take to otherwise be dealt as a damage over time effect. And it's very similar to the Brewmaster mitigation mechanic towards damage as a tank. So you would cast this onto your tank, or a player just taking a massive amount of burst damage, and that's going to convert it instead to a dot, giving you time to get echo out, giving you time to get reversion out, get your hots going. If you wanted to jump to that target, you could use rescue to fly to that target to get a big burst of healing, to reposition, and then get a big dream breath off for massive AoE heals. So in PvE, you got to think of yourself as highly mobile, maintaining hots, constantly mending the group, trying to move into better positions, trying to maximize your AoE healing when possible. You can also use a cooldown called Tip the Scales. This is kind of like the old version of Palm, a Presence of Mind from Mage, which should make your next spell instant. So you can use this to make an empowered spell instant and max charges. So that Spirit Blossom, you can go for a big emergency AoE heal. This is likely going to be an important combo for recovering, but you could also use this for damage, as one of its main mechanics for dealing damage is just Deep Fire Breath. And the more targets that it hits and the charges that it's higher on is then going to cause your next Living Flame, which is kind of just your spam heal, to do AoE. So you can participate a massive AoE hit or a massive AoE heal with the Living Flame if you needed to recover multiple targets. If you had run out of Echo or run out of Essence to be able to maintain Echo on multiple targets. Because when we cast Echo, it's going to spend these little CD-ROM discs. I don't know how many of you are old enough in the chat or in the stream to know what a CD-ROM disc is, but once you've spent all your CD-ROM discs on Echo, you're going to be really out of healing. So going for a deep breath and then getting that charged into a Living Flame, which can bounce to all of your allies, is going to give you a big boost of AoE healing and allow you to do a lot of healing in that regard. Outside of that, you can kind of mix in your Azure Strike, which is your melee attack. This Azure Strike is going to just give you CD-ROM discs, which is going to let you get more echoes. So you want to just be constantly weaving these attacks in. You can think of it kind of like a Holy Paladin with Crusader Strike, giving you holy power charges. But instead of casting Word of Glory, you're going to cast Echo. And Echo, being a casted spell, means that you are going to be very vulnerable to interrupts, especially in a PvP situation. So it's going to be very important for you to constantly be moving around the map. You have some interesting abilities like Oppressing Roar, which is a 2-minute cooldown and increases all crowd control on the target by 50%. So you can provide a massive utility by just landing this onto a trash pull and then flying through with your deep breath and then recalling back to your original location and getting maybe a fire breath off into a big living flame for massive AoE cleave. So you can do this like insane AoE burst damage on a trash pull. But the main reason the oppressing roar can be good is that if you're gathering a lot of packs of mobs together, you can get a big AoE stun, whether it's yours, talented, or from another party member, which is very important when it comes to things like Mythic Plus, is grouping mobs together, stun locking them, preventing them from casting for as long as possible. You have one defensive cooldown kind of here, personal defensive with the Obsidian Scales, which you can think of as kind of unending resolve. It's going to increase your armor. It's going to reduce magic damage taken by 20%, or more or less like a bark skin combination of the two by gaining this type of armor. So nice little mitigation cooldown for you to be able to survive. The main thing is that you just want to be flying around the map, spending your CD-ROM discs, keeping your reversion up on as many targets as possible, and then healing with the Echo by using your charged abilities like Deep Breath or using your Living Flame. In PvP, it's probably going to be a lot harder to get things off like a Fire Breath into an AoE Living Flame, just because if you think about all the time it takes to do that. Now, of course, we still don't have kind of like the tuning for PvP to know how fast it's going to be. The one thing that I have noticed is that it's very tough to fit in things like your Disintegrate, which is kind of like your offensive mind flay from a priest, like a shadow priest, but you've got it as an evoker, as a healer. Because it costs your CD-ROMs, it means you're going to be trading echoes for it. And you're also going to be likely having to use your hover charges to cast it, and it's only on a single target. So it's going to be a bit tough to fit that in PvE likely, but in PvP, you might be able to get a lot of big burst damage off. But I really just enjoyed flying around the map. They did a lot of relocation of talents on this, and I have a video covering the talents for the Evoker Preservation if you want to check out that video specifically that goes more into detail with this. I just wanted to give you kind of a vibe or a feel check on the preservation and see if it's kind of maybe getting your attention. You have some interesting racial abilities as well with the tail swipe, as well as the knockback or the wing buffet. So you can get an interrupt onto a group of mobs, knock them back, get another interrupt onto a group of mobs, get a massive oppressing roar into an AoE stun. So you have a lot of ways of disrupting mob groups and also just enemy spellcasters. So a mix of getting in and getting aggressive and then getting out is kind of what you want to be thinking about with the Evoker. It's going to take a lot of attention to detail on like where are players on the map, where do you need to move, where are you trying to get your Dream Breast off, are you maintaining your reversions, are you maintaining your echoes on multiple targets to constantly keep up your healing, and then timing your tank cooldowns or your burst cooldowns to try and get these big time dilations so that you're just staggering out the damage as much as possible so that you have time to recover for it. So it seems like a really kind of high actions per minute intense spec, likely going to be really powerful in things like Mythic Plus with how it's all AoE and it's got a lot of mechanics from other healing classes that have been powerful because of those mechanics in Mythic Plus. In PvP, you're going to be a lot more vulnerable because with the minimal range, people are going to jump on you a lot. They're going to stun lock you. A lot of your stuff takes a lot of setup and a lot of hard casted spells, which is generally going to be pretty weak in PvP. They have introduced some new honor talents that could potentially assist you with this. One of the main ones being Nullifying Shroud, which is a 1.5 minute cooldown. You're going to wreath yourself in arcane energy, preventing the next 3 full loss of control effects against you, and it'll last for 30 seconds. It's like a holy ward, but 3 charges, but triple the cooldown as that of a holy priest. This is probably going to be very important for avoiding CC. It can be tough to try and squeeze in your interrupt as well as get a lot of these high value spells and super fun spell things like Fly With Me, like picking up an ally and then moving them somewhere else to get them away from damage. It really depends on the range on these types of spells as to how effective they are. I was really hoping that my dungeon queue was going to pop. Maybe we're going to get the dungeon queue to pop in this video. We can cover the gameplay specifically in that. This is kind of the primer, the warm up to it. And then we've also got things like Hover makes you immune to movement speed reduction effects so that you can constantly move around the map. If you know the enemy team has a lot of snare effects, it's going to be tough for you. Like you're going to get trained down by double melee DPS. You could use Unburdened Flight to try and buff up your hover ability to be able to move around the map and cast Living Flames and be able to save yourself and heal yourself. We also then have the Obsidian Mantle, which is then Obsidian Scales is going to grant you immunity to interrupt, silence, and pushback effects. This is why I said it was kind of like the Unending Resolve, because when you combine the two together with this honor talent, being immune to these types of effects is very similar to what you would expect from the unending resolve of a warlock. We have super fun abilities like time stop to be able to freeze an ally's time stream for 4 seconds, and then while frozen they can't do anything because it's like an ice block, and then you can reactivate this early to cancel it. So a group ice block on a 2-minute cooldown that you could use for yourself. You're gonna have to be very premeditative with the preservation evoker. Activate this before you've taken damage, because I feel like it's going to be pretty tough to recover, especially if you don't have something like tip the scales, as well as like a spirit bloom for immediate recovery. With that in regards, we have some personal defensives which are likely not as valuable in PvE, like renewing blaze with a 1.5-minute cooldown. Surround yourselves in flames, which is just going to heal all of the damage that you take. So if you're expecting to be the target, which in PvP I'm imagining you are, in PvE that you probably can ignore this talent, you're going to want to be picking this up, because when people jump on you, your ability to recover is going to kind of be staggered between these abilities, with your time dilation negating a lot of damage into a dot, and then chaining that later on for burst damage into a renewing blaze, and trying to line up these cooldowns specifically in moments to survive. One thing that's kind of disappointing is that you have cheeky honor talents like this. You're coming with me, a 1.5-minute cooldown. You're gonna grab an enemy and then fly them to a target location. Super fun and interesting ability. Kind of wish it was just baseline, because these other honor talents are so powerful and critical in terms of making you viable in PvP, because you're going to be vulnerable. You're very minimal range. This seems to be the major concern in Mythic Plus as well in PvE. I think in PvE you can kind of abuse the mobility, because the boss isn't going to try and 3-2-1 stun RMP you as in PvP. So as long as you're good with your mobility, I think you'll be able to kind of rescue yourself out of bad situations. Maybe fly with me to get an ally also out of a bad situation, and kind of deal with the fact that your 25-yard range is minimal. But in PvP, where you're encountering players who are actively trying to punish your mobility, seeing where you're going, it's going to become a lot more stressful. So it's a bit unfortunate that a lot of these honor talents feel like things that are just going to try and correct those issues with your class in PvP, and then you can't take fun stuff like you're coming with me. Another one is the dream projection, which is a very super cool ability. 1.5-minute cooldown though, and this is another problem, is that a lot of their spells are like 1.5-minute cooldown. You're gonna send a projection of yourself, and then you can explode that projection to dispel all nearby allies of magical effects. So you can dispel an AoE dispel for dots, damage or time effects, or an AoE dispel to try and remove crowd control, so a secondary dispel. Again, it's kind of a cheeky spell. You're going to stay on the ground while your little projection flies out, and then you can explode it by pressing the 2 keybind, heal your targets, and dispel. So it could be really cool as a combination, maybe with Obsidian Scales, with the immunity to silence if you're fighting an Affliction Warlock, and then send out your little Dream Projection to just, get all the dots off all the whole team. But with it being a 1.5-minute cooldown secondary dispel that takes a lot of ramp, even though it's really cool and feels awesome when you're doing it, in terms of actual like effectiveness and value, it's probably going to fall off pretty hard. So my overall assessment for this specialization is that it looks really powerful in a group PvE setting. You have a lot of mechanics from other classes that make them powerful in that setting. It's going to feel really good and feel really juicy and smooth. I was really hoping to get a dungeon queue to pop here, but of course we're on the alpha, so maybe there's not a lot of people on at the moment. If you want to follow gameplay for everything related to Dragonflight, some cheeky stuff for Wrath of the Lich King as well, then make sure you hit the subscribe button for the channel. But when it comes to PvP, I've got my concerns for it. We're going to have to wait till we get to the PvP testing phase of this to be able to jump in and get some gameplay for that to see if my predictions are true. But this is assessments based off of years and years of experience on things that end up kind of getting punished too easily in PvP and mechanics and that type of stuff. And I kind of see a bit of that with this spec, but it looks super fun. A very unique and breath of fresh air for a healing specialization. It's going to feel completely different than anything else that you've expected, and they've taken a lot of mechanics and combined them in a unique way that I didn't expect before. So initial thoughts, really good. It's a cool spec. Bit worried about competitive viability in PvP. So other than that, I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and comment down below. What type of class or spec should I check out next? What do you want to see? And I'll be able to get that to you basically every single day. So thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. I'm gonna go fly around on my dragon now.